Welcome back, viewers and subscribers. I wanted to put together a video to review and provide my thoughts on the Destiny 2 beta. I apologize that this video is a little late, but I wanted to ensure that I had plenty of time to thoroughly play through all of the content rather than just push out a video as quickly as possible. A quick note on the gameplay that you guys will be seeing in the background during this commentary. I tried to capture a little bit of everything, but it will be mostly Crucible, with some footage of the Inverted Spire Strike, as well as the farm social space, basically the Tower 2.0 that we briefly had access to on Sunday. Before we dive into my thoughts on the beta, I wanted to provide some context on my experience with the game for those that might not be familiar with me, just so you have an idea as to what kind of perspective I have on the game. Am I someone that just played a little bit of vanilla Destiny, or am I someone that played through all 3 years? Well, I would classify myself as a relatively serious Destiny player. I mained Warlock across all 3 years of Destiny 1, did every challenge mode on every raid, and played more than my share of Trials of Osiris and PvP scrims, or sweats as they were called. And again, this is not me trying to brag or gloat about my achievements or anything, if you can even call them achievements. I just want to provide some context for you guys so you have an idea as to what kind of player you're hearing from. So with that out of the way, here are my thoughts on the Destiny 2 beta. Overall, I simply believe there was just not enough content in the beta, especially in comparison to the beta of Destiny 1. Let's just take a quick look at what we could do in the Destiny 1 beta for the sake of comparison. In Destiny 1, we had access to the Tower, several story missions, control PvP on a number of maps, and I believe also patrol on Earth. Additionally, we got a little kind of a surprise where we had access to, I think, one mission on the moon, and then they held like an Iron Banner kind of teaser for about an hour. Back on Destiny 2, the beta was basically the same 3 activities that players have been seeing since the official reveal and E3. Don't take this statement the wrong way. I'm not trying to hate on Bungie or anything at all. I'm sure they are diligent workers and are very passionate about their game and simply want the very best for it. I also realize that a beta should only be a small sample of the final product and nothing too grand. But when you think about Destiny 1, the beta there, obviously they're trying to show off the new IP and what it's all about. But with Destiny 2, they have a different objective. Basically, they're trying to entice people that may have left the franchise in Destiny 1, saying, hey, here's some of the big changes we made, come back and try our game again. To that end, I genuinely believe there was very little in the beta that would convince a large number of skeptical players to commit to the full game. Bungie no longer has the benefit of the doubt with that audience. Take, for example, during the reveal event, we heard a lot about how Patrol has been revamped with, lost sectors and more interesting things to do. Why not give players a small taste of those activities? There were no moments in the beta that had a big wow factor, at least for me personally. It just felt like we were essentially playing a Destiny 1 DLC. Which, you don't expect a developer to reinvent the wheel with a sequel to their previous game. It's just, I don't feel that anyone that was really skeptical with Destiny 1 was going to play the beta and think, yes, this is substantially different than the first game. I think when people see a, big numerical sequel for a game, that's what they're expecting, big changes, and I don't see them here in this, at least as indicated by this beta. I know that this review might be coming off as a little negative and a little grim, and that's not entirely true. I'm just trying to be realistic is all. There were definitely a number of positives with the beta. For one, I think it's very obvious that Bungie is concentrated on better presenting the overall story of the game, something that they received a lot of mainstream criticism for with the release of Destiny 1. We have a clearly defined villain in the form of Ghaul, as well as a central conflict, and I think those two things will do wonders for the reception of this game at launch. Much like in Destiny 1, the art and audio teams did an absolutely fantastic job. The Destiny 2 beta looked extremely good, and the audio was very, very impressive. You know, Bungie has, I think, always done a very good job in both of those two departments. Furthermore, you have the introduction of the new class-based abilities, which add an extra layer to gameplay. Even though the hunter-dodge mechanic does feel a little underwhelming compared to the powerful supportive abilities that the Titan and the Warlock have. And then you have the sort of rework of Sunsinger, Blade Dancer, and Defender into Dawnblade, Arcstrider, and Sentinel. I mean, obviously I'm a little partial to the Dawnblade and the fact that the Warlock finally has a dodge mechanic in the form of Icarus perk, you know, which is basically Twilight Garrison. But I think all three of those classes, you know, are at least interesting and new. So there were, like I said, a number of positives with the beta. Seeing as the gameplay is now showing some of the new Crucible, I'd like to transition gears a little bit and talk about that. I obviously spent most of my time in the beta playing Crucible, and there were noticeable improvements there as well. The obvious switch to 4v4 is certainly interesting, but I think it's a little early to tell if that will be good or bad for the game in the long run. It does, I think, put a greater emphasis on cooperation and team shotting, which I personally like. The increase in time to kill, I think, has both positives and negatives, and that's an entirely different subject on its own regard, and you could do an entire video on that. I think players will at least appreciate the reduced occurrences of, you know, melty kills where your character is just like instantly deleted from the map. The changes to control, as well as the introduction of the countdown kind of search and destroy game mode, I think were both really good in my book. Another big change that I haven't mentioned up until this point is the reorganization of the player weapon slots. If we're speaking in Destiny 1 terms, you can now carry 2 primary weapons and then a special or heavy in your third slot. This is certainly an interesting change, and it's one that 100% occurred due to Salt in PvP. I initially have mixed reactions on it, and it's 100% due to the fact that the power weapons feel so incredibly underwhelming in both PvE and PvP. Judging by from what we had in the beta, anything that was not the fusion rifle just felt incredibly lackluster. You know, the sniper was awkward, not all that good. Grenade launcher was terrible. Linear fusion rifle, awful. The rocket, you got one rocket to deal with. And I guess the shotgun was alright, but just as a whole, if the beta is anything to judge by, the power weapons feel really underwhelming, in my opinion. Another issue that I had, and apparently also a lot of other people experienced as well, was the very long cooldown on abilities and the extremely slow supercharge rate. You know, don't get me wrong, I think it's really, really good that Bungie appears to be moving away from ability spam, particularly in PvP, and, you know, trying to focus more on gun-on-gun gameplay, and I think that's very good. But when it comes to the supercharge rates, you basically got your super once a match, and it was usually at the very end, and it just made it feel like your super usage didn't really have a large impact on the game, on the match in most cases. And, you know, in PvE it wasn't quite as bad, but even then still, your ability cooldowns just seemed really, really long. You know, it's probably due to the fact that we had, you know, just okay gear or not optimized gear, but just as an initial impression with the beta, it didn't feel all that good. And with that pretty much summarizes all of the main talking points that I wanted to cover in this review. I mean, obviously there's going to be some rebalancing and stuff before the main release of the game, and I think one other thing I want to mention is I think some of the UI, UX stuff, for example, it's kind of difficult to see who's in your game and, you know, viewing the roster and stuff. I think all that could maybe use a little bit of work as well. And we still, you know, have about a month or so, a little bit more up until launch. So hopefully that'll all get sorted out. If you made it this far, I just want to say thank you very much for taking the time to watch and listen to the video. The main takeaway for this review is I don't think there was enough in the beta to convert skeptical players into Destiny fans. But, you know, time will tell. I'm definitely still excited for the game, going to be playing it, but I just wanted to kind of compile my thoughts into sort of a review. I'm going to let the rest of the gameplay play out. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch and listen, and have a good day. I'll see you guys in my next video.
Zone B lost. Enemy controls all zones. Zone C secure. Gains the lead. You're falling behind. Zone A captured. You have advantage. I could watch fighting like this forever. You're almost there. Zone C lost. You captured Zone B. You have advantage. 2-for-1. Victory is all I ask. Good.